As AI continues to take the tech and investing worlds by storm, the White House just passed a landmark executive order that aims to put guardrails in place against potential risks to national security and the consumer when it comes to AI. But tech giants like Microsoft and Meta continue to underscore robust investments in the space. So what are the broader implications for AI here? John, let's start with you because you run an AI ETF, namely the Global X Artificial Intelligence and Technology ETF. That's ticker AIQ. The new order President Biden just laid out is pretty ambitious. Do you see it as more of a burden or a boon to AI players in the space and perhaps public adoption more broadly?
So I think some of in the executive order, there's a lot of common sense potential regulation as it relates to AI. You know, I recently went to a conference where I was listening to tech leaders talk about AI, as well as staple type companies and how AI is going to be built into their overall business model. I think AI is very important. It appeared on the scene kind of in a common sense way to the everyday person just about a year ago. But what you are seeing is every single company the S&P 500 companies talking about AI and how to effectively use AI. So what you have is it's bifurcated. You have the Magnificent Seven who have access to a lot of data, access to a lot of capital, and that's where you saw the market driven in the first by those seven names in the first half of the year. But what you are going to see is the use of AI into business models, how to improve efficiencies. What we are seeing is a strong CapEx cycle, a little bit weaker this quarter from last quarter, but still very strong. Labor overall is very tight. Companies are looking to improve their overall efficiency. And how do we work with AI? And I think that's key. And within two of our ETFs, AIQ, which is focused on some of the larger names, has a cap to some of those larger names at 3% upon rebalance, is a good way to play in a measured way AI. Also, we have another ETF, BOTZ, B-O-T-Z, Robotics and Artificial Intelligence. And that ETF plays on the CapEx cycle and efficiency and goes beyond tech.
Todd, do you think that the news out of today releases some of the air in the AI hype train, or do you think it continues into 2024? And apart from some of the more obvious candidates for AI, like big tech, for example, what other sectors do you think actually benefit the most from the current AI boom?
So I agree with John that what we're seeing is this is impacting the broader sectors. So you have obviously the technology companies that are benefiting from this and are a driver for their overall revenues. But we are seeing healthcare companies as well. We're seeing e-commerce companies. We at Verify run the index behind the Think ETF, THNQ, which is a robo-global artificial intelligence ETF. And you'll get exposure to healthcare, e-commerce companies within that portfolio as well. This is an ETF that is constructed differently than some of the others in the marketplace. John talked about AIQ. There's also iShares has an IRBO ETF that has artificial intelligence and robotics as part of it. It's really impacting the broader sector. So I think we're in the early stages. This is going to be, as John mentioned, we're in year one. We're likely to see 3, 5, 7 years, and why we're seeing more ETF investors look at these thematic-oriented ETFs.
Dave, you recently launched a new generative AI ETF in September. Chat is the ticker there. Can you weigh in here on how generative applications could play a role in the next, say, 1 to 7 years?
Yeah, no, thank you. So the Chat ETF is focused just on companies involved with generative AI. So it is a more concentrated, narrower type of exposure, but one that we believe is beneficial when we think about the opportunities for the next generation of AI. And what I think is interesting, if you look at some of the most recent earnings reports, whether it's names like Salesforce or ServiceNow, we're actually seeing already generative AI tools being brought at the enterprise level to customers. And this is a theme that I think we are just at the early stages of. There's been folks who have a lot more tech and a lot more experience than me who have come out and said, this is the iPhone moment. This is the next big thing, just like the internet was. And there's a lot of belief in that because it's happening now. Oftentimes when we think about themes, they're 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future. generative AI is here now. It was just a year ago where ChatGPT really became widely available. Now we know Elon Musk is getting involved most recently with launch of another AI tool. So again, we are at the early stages of something that has applications both for enterprises and for consumers, which I think is really neat. So I imagine sitting around Thanksgiving tables in a few weeks, we'll be hearing a lot more about generative AI and how people maybe are using it when they're talking to their friends and family.
Maybe one day it can help build a Thanksgiving menu and other ways to make Thanksgiving a little easier on some of us. We'll see.